When a little girl calls 911, the shocking truth that haunts forever. The night was dark, shadows sprawled across the quiet streets like fingers reaching for something lost. In the small town of Maplewood, the sound of ice cracking under the weight of an unseen threat echoed in the stillness. It was a night that would turn ordinary lives upside down, a night when laughter would morph into screams. And in the small, cluttered living room of a suburban home, a little girl clutched her toy phone, eyes wide, body trembling. She was just 7, too innocent for the horrors that lurked around her. Suddenly, she pressed the buttons, and with shaky breath, she dialed 911. "Help! There's something in my room." Her voice cracked, thick with fear. Outside, the wind howled, almost as if it were a warning. Was it just the creaking floorboards? Was that a whisper echoing through the air? The dispatcher, baffled yet intrigued, tried to calm her. But in the background, anything rustled. The girl's fear palpable, her heart raced as shadows loomed larger, and the walls seemed to close in on her. She heard it then, a soft thud, like footsteps, slowly creeping closer, tearing apart her reality. The detective assigned to the case would later say that the call made everyone's skin crawl. What did she see? He wondered. The moon peeked through the windows, casting eerie silhouettes, illuminating terrified eyes and trembling hands. It sounded like she was in a horror movie, he admitted, unable to shake off the image of the girl's fright. As police arrived, the scene was chaotic. Neighbors poked their heads out, anxious whispers filling the air. "Did you hear that? Poor thing." Murmurs dispersed like smoke, blending with the gathered crowd. But no one could imagine what lay behind those walls. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The officers crept toward the room, flashlights cutting through the darkness like knives. Each step echoed, a heartbeat of the unknown. What was hiding there? The little girl watched as they opened the door, breaths held, an uneasy silence. And then, a scream pierced the air, leaving everyone frozen. What had they found? Panic spread like wildfire, and that small voice became a haunting riddle no one could solve. It left everyone asking one terrifying question: what really happened that night? The scream shattered the night, a piercing wail that hung in the air like a ghost. Every bystander felt it vibrate through their bones. Officers rushed into the room, their hearts pounding in their chests, adrenaline coursing like wildfire. Outside, whispers grew louder, fluctuating between horror and concern. What are they finding? Is she okay? The questions raced, but nobody had answers. Inside the house, the little girl knelt on the floor, her toy phone still clutched in trembling hands. She peered into the ominous shadows that danced at the edges of her vision. The chill stung her skin, but the dread pulsating in her chest was far worse. The room felt foreign, as if it had changed into a dark space that swallowed screams and hope. The officers who rushed in were trained to handle danger, yet nothing could prepare them for the sight before them. Torn apart at the seams, the girl's bed lay in disarray, blankets askew like victims of a chaotic struggle. Toys scattered across the floor bore witness to the horrors that unfolded just moments ago. But what gripped them most was the shadowed corner of the room where a figure loomed. A figure shrouded in darkness, too still to see clearly. One officer advanced, flashlight aimed, cutting through the night as he commanded, "Show yourself." His voice cracked, defiance mingling with fear. The darkness quivered slightly, as if it hesitated, before retreating into the shadows. Relief and dread mingled as they neared. The tension felt thick enough to choke on. "Ma'am?" His voice softened, "Can you hear me?" The little girl's wide eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she nodded, her gaze glued to an empty space in her room. It was here, she whispered, it was right there. Suddenly, another voice echoed from the entrance of the room, a sound that sent a wave of fresh panic sweeping across the officers. What have you found? It was the detective, arriving just moments too late. The officer motioned for him to step back as he crouched down, trying to reassure the girl. Can you tell us what happened? He asked gently. I saw it in my room, she murmured, quaking. It was creeping closer, like it wanted to eat me. I couldn't breathe, and then I called you. The detective's heart raced, a chill crawling up his spine. Did it look like anyone? He pressed, urgency in his voice. The girl shook her head violently, her tiny frame trembling. No. It was not a person. I don't know what it was. It was dark, and it whispered my name. Your name? He echoed, anxiety sharpening his senses. What did it say? Stay here forever. Her small voice broke, clarity intercut with a tremor of fear, as if she could still hear the icy whisper curling around her thoughts. The detective exchanged a glance with the officer, a silent agreement forming this was no ordinary incident. As they searched the corner for signs of life or any trace of the sinister entity, unease settled heavy in the air. Then, amidst the creaks of the house, a faint rustle sighed from the closet, a sinister invitation to uncover more than they were ready to face. Get back up, the detective ordered, urgency igniting his voice. And seal the perimeter. But as they turned, the girl's voice rose in alarm. Don't leave me. It's coming back. And with that, a chill swept through the officers and the gathering crowd outside, their pulse racing with dread. What had they unleashed? New shadows stirred in the depths of the room, a looming dread that promised to shake Maplewood to its core. The night was far from over, and the secrets were just beginning to unravel. What else lay hidden in the whispers of the dark? Panic surged as the detective sprinted toward the closet. The little girl's plea echoed in his mind, an urgent reminder that time was running out. The shadows shifted, thickening in the corner as if feeding on their fear. He swore he felt a presence, a palpable weight pressing against his chest. Stay close to her. He shouted to the officer, his voice slicing through the tense air. The officer nodded, his hand ready on the radio, the other gripping his flashlight like a lifeline. They had to act fast. The door to the closet creaked open slowly, groaning like a wounded animal. From within, darkness poured out like ink spilled on paper. The officer raised his light, illuminating the space. Clothes hung limply, but there was no sign of the entity. Only a feeling of pulsing energy that seemed to whisper secrets. With seconds ticking by, the detective's gaze darted back to the girl. Can you try to remember what it said? Anything that might help us? Her brow furrowed, each creased line highlighting her fear. It said it wanted to take me where it lived. Her voice quivered, tears spilling down her cheeks. It told me if I didn't listen, I would be lost. Lost? The detective's stomach nodded. What does that mean? Before she could answer, the lights flickered overhead, sending the room into an eerie half-light. Shadows quaked and twisted, their shapes writhing like dark smoke. A murmur echoed through the air, entangling words drowned in static. It felt like something was crawling just beyond their sight. Everyone, get ready. The detective barked, scanning the corners. We're not alone. Outside, murmurs turned into gasps. Parents clutched their children, their faces pale as they peeked through windows. Fear had spread, consuming the crowd like a wildfire. What's happening in there? A woman cried out, her eyes wide with worry. In the room, the pressure grew unbearable. The little girl pressed her tiny hands to her ears, trying to block out the whispers that clawed at her. Please, make it stop. The officer moved closer, kneeling beside her. You're safe with us. We'll protect you, I promise. But even he could feel the rising tide of dread. Suddenly, the closet door slammed shut with a deafening bang, rattling the walls. The detective spun around, his heart at his throat. Something in there. No. The girl shrieked. It doesn't want you to find it. The detective lunged for the door, grasping the handle, but it held firm. The darkness felt alive, pushing back against him. The air crackled, sending jolts of electricity through his body. He stepped back, realizing they had to rethink their approach. Can you tell us what it looks like? He pressed, trying to focus her attention. Anything that stands out? With a quaking voice, she stammered, It had no face. Just eyes. Dark, empty eyes. And it smiled, but it was not friendly. A chill ran through the detective, igniting a primal fear. Okay, listen, we'll get you out of here. Just stay with us, all right? As he shouted instructions, the walls seemed to vibrate with something dreadful. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the windows, unleashing a haunting howl that sent shivers down their spines. The atmosphere shifted as if the very foundation of the house was quaking. Get that door open. He shouted to the officer, who fumbled with the handle. Then, from the shadows behind them, a chilling voice broke through the air. You think you can take her away from me? It dripped with malice, reverberating through the room. The detective felt the air grow heavy with dread, the smell of damp earth crawling into his nostrils. In that moment, he realized they were in a deeper trap than he had ever imagined. Call for help. He commanded, but the officer was frozen, eyes wide, staring at the shadows that danced off the walls. The girl's sobbing grew louder. It's coming. It's coming. As the figure seemed to coalesce in the darkness, the detective braced himself. He wouldn't let fear take hold, not now, not when they were so close to the truth. But somewhere in the depths of that room, in that dreadful darkness. The whispers grew louder. What lay beyond that veil, hidden from their sight? A guttural growl emanated from the shadows, echoing like a death knell in the closed-off space. The detective's instincts kicked in, urging him to move, to do something, anything, but he felt frozen, paralyzed by the sheer terror that wrapped around him like a serpent. Behind him, the little girl gasped, her tiny frame trembling like a leaf in a storm. Stay back, all of you. The detective shouted, his voice hoarse. He stepped toward the closet, his flashlight beam slicing through the thick darkness. But the shadow wasn't retreating, it was straining forward, growing larger, more defined, as if it were feeding off his fear. Help me. The girl cried, grasping at his pant leg. Please. He knelt, gripping her shoulders firmly. Listen to me, we're going to get out of this. But you have to be brave. The shadows writhed and twisted, responding to his words with a low hiss. Brave? The voice came again, cold as ice, mocking. Where do you think you're going? She belongs to me. The detective felt a shiver crawl down his spine. What do you want with her? He demanded, unable to keep the tremor from his voice. The air crackled, and he sensed the walls closing in, like the jaws of some monstrous beast. She has been chosen, the voice whispered, full of sinister delight. She will come to understand, to embrace her true nature. Her true nature. The officer blurted, finally shaking off his stupor. What the hell are you talking about? A laugh echoed back, dripping with malice and derision. Oh, you aren't ready for that truth. Is anyone ever ready? Ignoring the voice, the detective focused on the girl, trying to take her mind off the horror around them. Can you remember anything else it said? Anything? She nodded slowly, wiping her tears with small, shaking hands. It told me to find the door. The door where it lives. Her voice was faint, barely above a whisper, but something in her tone sparked a flicker of hope in his chest. The door, the detective muttered, his mind racing. What door? Where is it? I don't know. She cried. It's dark and it blends in with the walls. At that moment, the air turned cold, the shadows circling them like predators. You don't truly think you can escape? The dark voice taunted again, its presence palpable now, almost tactile. "You're all mine." The detective felt a surge of anger, pushing back against the fear that threatened to anchor him in place. "This isn't over. We're leaving here." But even as he yelled, the atmosphere thickened. The walls began to pulsate as if they were breathing. The sound of a distant child's laughter chimed in the background, mingling with the whispers. It wasn't playful, it was twisted, a haunting echo that sent terror racing through the pit of his stomach. "Detective!" The officer shouted, suddenly lunging for the flashlight, shining it directly at the closet door. There, at the frame's edge, a faint shimmer glowed, almost imperceptible against the darkness. "I think I see something." "Hold it steady." He leaped forward, driven by desperation, slightly pushing the officer aside. The beam of light revealed a faint outline, a door hidden within a door, a portal buried under layers of shadow. "Help me open it." The detective snarled, his hands pushing against the frame. It felt soft, like the earth after rain, resistant and damp. From behind them, the voice roared, shaking the very foundation of the room. "You can't resist me. She'll come when the time is right. Not today." With a final push, he yelled as he and the officer wrenched the door open, revealing yet another layer of impenetrable darkness. The air surged with whispers, voices tugging at their minds. "Go!" he shouted to the girl. "Now!" As she stepped forward, hesitating for just a moment, the shadows erupted around them, swirling like a tempest. He felt the air shift, the energy crackling, preparing for something drastic. But the darkness wasn't finished. "You think this is escape?" "It's only the beginning." The detective felt a cold fear grip his heart, realizing with dawning horror that they weren't out of danger yet. The darkness loomed. And there was nowhere to hide. What awaited them in that unfathomable abyss lurking just beyond the door? The detective took a deep breath, readying himself for what lay ahead. He could sense the girl beside him, her small hand slipping into his, offering a fragile link to sanity in the chaos. It was a fleeting comfort, but it was enough to steal a moment's courage. As they stepped through the door, the air changed. It grew thick, like syrup, clinging to their skin and making each breath feel laborious. The whispers were louder here, echoing in a myriad of voices, clawing at the edges of his mind. The darkness seemed to pulse, alive, and the detective felt a sinking feeling that this was no ordinary place. "Detective, where are we?" the girl asked, her voice small and trembling. "I don't know yet," he admitted, scanning their surroundings. They stood on the threshold of an expansive void, shadows darting and twisting like snakes, slithering amongst pillars that loomed out of the dark. "But we'll find a way." The shadows shifted, as if they were aware of his determination. "Foolish man, you cannot save her," the dark voice purred from the depths. "She has been beckoned by the true darkest night," and you. It paused, the word hanging ominously, "You're merely a distraction." "Shut up!" he barked. "You won't get her. Not now, not ever." With each defiant word, the shadows quivered, momentarily stilling. The moment felt electric, a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom. As if sensing their momentary rattle, he pulled the girl closer to him. "Can you see anything?" he asked, forcing himself to focus. "Any doors? Any other paths?" She squinted into the void, her expression brimming with fear. It's all so dark." But her eyes widened, rupturing the tension. "I think I see something." "Where?" "Straight ahead. There's a light." Hope ignited within him. "Lead the way." They stepped carefully forward, feet shuffling against what felt like a cold, damp stone floor, slick underneath them. The closer they got, the more the light refracted around them, casting odd shapes and shadows that flared and danced to an unseen beat, but then the laughter returned twisted and sinister. It echoed off the walls like a haunting symphony, chilling every nerve in the detective's body. "You think you'll find safety in the light?" the entity jeered. The light is merely a gateway to greater horrors. Just keep moving. He urged the girl, ignoring the voice that crept under his skin, whispering insidious thoughts. As they approached the light, it formed into a door framed by shimmering particles that flickered like dying stars. It felt warm, inviting, a sharp contrast to the cold tendrils wrapping around them. The detective hesitated, glancing back at the shadows which seemed to be gathering in fury. "Open it," the girl urged. He pushed against the door, it swung wide with an ease that startled him. They stepped into the threshold, both gripped by a wave of urgency, a need to flee, to escape the darkness that threatened to engulf them. What they found beyond was a vast landscape, not like anything he had ever seen. It was surreal, like stepping into a dream gone wrong. The sky was an unnatural shade of crimson, casting an eerie glow on everything below. Strange creatures slithered in the distance, their forms obscure and grotesque. This isn't right," the detective whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "I don't want to be here," the girl whimpered, her grip tightening around his arm. "We'll find a way back," he said, more to reassure himself than her. But then, a low, haunting song began to rise, echoing through the landscape, resonating with something deep inside the girl. "Do you hear that?" she breathed, her eyes wide with a strange mixture of fear and wonder. He nodded slowly, realizing the melody felt familiar to her. It was as if it were calling her name. A sense of dread washed over him. "We need to go, now." But the girl was already stepping forward, drawn by the haunting notes, leaving him stunned. The shadows loomed behind, growing restless. The voice, once muffled, now thundered, "Let her go. Embrace what is destined." The detective's heart raced. If she stepped too far into that trap, wait. He lunged, but the ground beneath him began to tremble, cracking open seams of darkness as twisted faces squirmed to the surface, watching with hungry eyes. In that shattering moment, he realized, they weren't just facing shadows anymore. They were up against something far more insidious, something that threatened not just to take the girl away but to tear them apart. What became of them now, ensnared in this surreal nightmare? He raced towards her, heart pounding, desperate to pull her back before the melody swallowed her whole. But could he reach her in time? He lunged, fighting against the trembling earth. The space around them twisted and warped, contorting under the weight of something ancient and malevolent. The shadows pulsed, their twisted faces far too eager as they watched the frantic dance of a desperate man trying to save the child he had vowed to protect. "Come back!" he screamed, his voice choked with urgency. The girl, entranced by the melody, swayed gently as if caught in an invisible breeze. The detective felt a gut-wrenching fear. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to reach her before the darkness claimed its prize, but her eyes glazed over, reflecting the crimson sky, entrancing yet terrifying. Each step she took forward echoed like a death knell in his ears. "Snap out of it!" he shouted, bounding across the thickening void, his feet slipping on the slick surface. The haunting song wrapped around them, pulling at the edges of his sanity, threatening to drown out the sound of his voice. Just as he managed to close the distance, a flash of blinding light erupted from the ground, a fissure of bright energy pulling her closer. The girl gasped, her small form teetering on the edge of the crack, caught between the mesmerizing melody and her protector's terrified grasp. The shadows lurched forward, stretching their long, clawed fingers, ready to snatch her away. The detective reached her just in time, grasping her wrist. The pull from below was immense, as if the earth itself wanted her. "Hold on!" he yelled, trying to anchor her and himself with a strength he wasn't sure he had. "No! It's calling me!" she cried, eyes wide, no longer just afraid but filled with a strange allure, softness laced with a hint of something darker that chilled him to the core. "Don't listen. Fight it!" He felt the panic rising in his throat, and with a surge of adrenaline, he pulled her back toward him. The shadows shrieked, their voices a cacophony of rage enveloping them, drowning out the haunting song that had captivated her so. Suddenly, the light from the fissure flickered violently, as if wavering under their struggle. It surged higher, ominously casting long shadows that crept towards him like a tidal wave. He felt its coldness wash over him, and the laughter turned malevolent, echoing in the chamber of his mind, relentless in its taunting. Then the ground beneath him shifted again, and the detective lost his balance. He fell to his knees, pulling the girl harshly back against him. The energy from the fissure surged, flinging him backward even as he clutched her tightly. Let her go. She meant to join us. The darkness growled, but his heart flared with a defiance he never knew he had. I want to let you take her. He roared, the words coming from a primal instinct to protect, the rawness of a man desperate to ward off the unfathomable. With one last effort, he tightened his grip around the girl's tiny hand and pushed his fear aside. I'm not losing you. Not now. Not ever. In that moment, the shadows lunged forward, swarming like a dark tide. They reached for the girl, a hunger that raked the air, grasping but never quite managing to penetrate the barrier he formed. With a fierce determination, he pulled her in close. He could feel her warmth, her little heart racing against his chest, and in that heartbeat he found a flicker of hope. On 3, we run. The detective steadied his breathing, digging deep into a reservoir of strength as he prepared to sprint away from the clutches of the abyss. But the ground rumbled, threatening to swallow them both. 2 The shadows laughed, and a tremendous weight pressed down, suffocating the air around them. 3 He bolted forward, yanking the girl along, moving against the darkness that threatened to rip them apart. But as they plunged into the chaos, the inky tendrils grasped for them, weaving threatening knots around their legs, and just as they surged into what he hoped was safety, a thunderous crack echoed behind them, splitting the very air. What now? He thought, his heart racing as he felt the space around them constrict, a final breath before a plunge into the unknown. What awaited them on the other side of that threshold? Was there truly a way back, or had they crossed a point of no return? The moment they broke free, the air felt thick and cold, a stark contrast to the chaos that pulsed behind them. The detective stumbled forward, pulling the girl tight against him, her innocent breaths mixing with his frantic gasps. Beyond the darkness, the shadows writhed, stretching their anguish toward the place they had just left. Are we safe? She whispered, shivering slightly. Her small frame trembled, and he realized how vulnerable she truly was. The thrill of escaping soon felt overshadowed by the dawning terror settling in his chest. I think so, he stammered, uncertainty clawing at him. The world around them was dim, an eerie twilight cast by clouds that looked like bruises in the sky. He scanned their surroundings. They stood at the edge of a vast barren landscape, a desolate expanse littered with sharp rocks that clawed at the horizon like broken teeth. Why did you pull me? She asked, eyes wide with confusion. I wanted to go. No. His voice broke out like thunder, sending a jolt through her. It was a trick. They wanted to take you. The shadows danced at the corners of his mind, laughing, mocking. But I wouldn't let them. She glanced back toward the darkness, and he saw a flicker of longing in her gaze. A shiver ran down his spine. That look was a harbinger of the allure they had tried to escape. Listen to me, he said urgently, kneeling before her. He took her hands in his, searching her eyes for any sign of the little girl he knew. You're safe now. But we have to stay alert. We have to keep moving. The girl blinked, nodding slowly, though he could tell she was still processing what had happened just moments ago. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, as if the very ground beneath them was a living entity waiting, hungry. With a pull of his resolve, he stood again. They needed to find shelter, someplace that might give them a moment's rest. As they ventured deeper into the bleak landscape, an unsettling silence enveloped them, broken only by the distant echoes of their footsteps on the jagged rocks. Why did the shadows want me? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, he replied honestly, guilt gnawing at him. But we need to figure it out. I promise, we'll get through this. As they wandered, an oppressive fog rolled in, thick and heavy. It curled around them as if alive, clouding their vision and deepening the unsettling stillness. Shadows twisted in the mist, whispers flickered at the edges of his consciousness. "Stay close," he warned, gripping her hand tighter, but the girl's gaze drifted upward, her eyes wide as she pointed into the fog. "Look, there's something." He turned just in time to see a flicker of light break through the murk, faint yet alluring, shimmering like a beacon of hope. "What is that?" "I think it's calling to me," she murmured, entranced. "Don't. It might be more dangerous." Panic surged through him, a reminder of the darkness that had sought to consume her, but the girl took a step forward, her small body glimmering with an ethereal glow as she got nearer. It was as if she was becoming part of the very light she sought. "No, wait!" he shouted, lunging toward her. In that moment, the world around him shifted, shadows swirling like a vortex, and the sound of laughter bounced wildly through the mist, sharp, mocking, and desperate. "Run!" he shouted, dragging her back just as the light flared monumental, a brilliant flash that nearly blinded them both. As they stumbled backward, he felt the ground shake once more, and the shadows began to close in around them, deeper and darker than before. He couldn't help but scream, "What do you want from us?" The laughter returned, rasping and inhuman. "What you always wanted, child. To be free." An icy dread gripped his heart. Free? What did they mean by that? With each moment, the chasm of the unknown widened, and as they fought to escape the encroaching darkness, he realized something more terrifying than the shadows lay waiting ahead, answers that may destroy them both. Would they have the strength to confront the truth? Or would they fall into the very darkness they had tried so desperately to flee? As the blinding light receded, the oppressive fog thickened again, wrapping around them like an unwelcome embrace. He could hear his heart pounding in his ears, each beat a reminder of their narrow escape. But the momentary relief was fleeting. The laughter still echoed, deep and taunting, gnawing at him. "What does it mean?" the girl asked, her voice small. She looked up at him with wide, innocent eyes, searching for answers he didn't have. "I don't know," he managed, feeling the weight of the uncertainty pressing down on him. His mind raced, grasping for anything, some clue, some fragment of knowledge that could help them understand the darkness they were entangled in. They stumbled forward, the rocky terrain unforgiving under their feet. He pulled her back to him, noting every scrape and bruise as they pressed on. Though fatigue nipped at his heels, he couldn't afford to stop. "We need to find somewhere safe," he urged, his voice shaky but resolute. Ahead, the mist began to clear slightly, revealing a twisted structure silhouetted against the bruised sky. It loomed like a skeletal keepsake of a forgotten time, a building, half buried in the debris of the landscape. "Should we go there?" she whispered, a hint of doubt creeping into her tone. "It's better than staying out here," he replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. As they approached, the air grew heavier again, almost charged with an unnatural energy. The building's once proud facade was now weathered and cracked, but it loomed invitingly overhead. Shadows flickered at its corners, twitching like restless spirits. They stepped inside, the silence felt deafening, each footstep echoing against the crumbling walls that smelled of damp earth and despair. Sunlight filtered weakly through shattered windows, casting slants of ghostly brightness across the floor, making the room look both beautiful and sinister. "Why would anyone be here?" she asked, glancing around nervously. "Maybe someone made it their home," he replied, though he suspected it was more of a sanctuary for darkness. The very structure seemed to pulse with a life of its own, shadows clinging to the corners, waiting, watching. Suddenly, the laughter returned, louder this time. It swirled around them, filling the air with a chilling sensation. "Is it coming from inside?" He felt the blood drain from his face. "Maybe we should leave," she suggested, her eyes darting toward the entrance, her small body tense as she clung to him. "No, we can't. We need to see what's here," he insisted, suppressing a shiver of fear. His voice trembled. "Stay close." They moved deeper into the building, shadows swirling at their feet, tugging at the hem of reality itself. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to flicker in the dim light. "What is that?" the girl whispered, her curiosity overpowering her fear. As they approached, they saw tiny figures etched into the surface, scenes of children laughing, playing. Then suddenly, the images darkened, twisted into scenes of panic and despair. Their eyes went wide as they took in the horror of it all. "Do you see that?" he said, breath hitching in his throat. "It's like a story but twisted. It's stuck," she cried, pointing at the pedestal. "Where are they? Maybe it's a trap." He backed away instinctively, but there was something unresolved in the pedestal's pulsing energy. As he scanned the room, he felt a pull, an inexplicable compulsion to reach out and touch the carvings. "We have to understand." His voice trailed off as he hesitated, caught between the need for knowledge and the rising sense of dread. "That laughter, it's getting closer, isn't it?" she said, her voice trembling. He nodded slowly, his heart racing. "We have to find answers. But are we ready for what we might find?" With each passing moment, the weight of the choice loomed larger. They could either dig into the darkness surrounding them or flee and risk losing the truth forever. As the shadows began to close in again, he felt the girl squeeze his hand tightly. "Detective, what if this is what they want? What if it's all part of the trick?" Her question hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. He gazed at the pedestal, feeling the darkness shift around him. The choice was no longer his to make. Something in the shadows seemed to be pulling. "Get ready," he whispered, a raw determination rising within him. "We're going to find out the truth even if it destroys us." Just as he stepped forward, the laughter crescendoed, reaching a fever pitch. The pedestal glowed ominously, and with a rush of wind, the walls around them trembled. What awaited them next was more terrifying than they had ever imagined, and as the room darkened, he couldn't help but wonder if they were about to become the next chapter in the twisted tale of the shadows. The room twisted and warped around them, shadows elongating into monstrous shapes, stretching toward the pedestal. He felt the girl's grip tighten, her small fingers digging into his as if trying to anchor herself against the tide of darkness. The laughter exploded in a raucous chorus, a cacophony that seemed to shake the very foundation of the building. "Don't let go!" he shouted, his voice swallowed by the encroaching madness. It felt like the walls were closing in, the air growing thicker, a pressurized void where sound and light struggled to survive. "Detective!" she cried, panic creeping into her voice. He could barely breathe, his heart pounding like thunder in his chest. He darted a glance at the pedestal, the pulsing carvings now glowing with an eerie light that flickered like an old film reel. It seemed to be inviting them closer, or maybe it was warning them. "Wait! What if it wants us to get closer?" she whispered, her wide eyes reflecting a mix of fear and curiosity. "We'll figure it out. Just hold on to me," he replied, forcing his own fear down. He took a cautious step forward, compelled by an unseen force. The laughter danced around them, a chilling wind that wound through his bones. Closer to the pedestal, he could see details that had once been lost in the chaos of shadows, the faces of children frozen in laughter, and then, horror. It was a sickening juxtaposition, a reminder of how quickly joy could twist into fear. "What's happening, detective?" the girl asked, dread pooling in her voice. "I don't know," he admitted, feeling bare and exposed beneath the weight of the unknown. A strange hum filled the air now, vibrating through his skin. It grew louder, beckoning. He reached out, his fingers brushing the carvings. Instantly, visions flooded his mind, children trapped in a cycle of despair, endlessly attempting to escape a never-ending game of terror. Each touch sent a ripple of anguish through him, tightening his chest until he feared he might choke on the sorrow emanating from the pedestal. "Stop!" The girl pulled on his arm, but it was too late. A flash of light erupted from the carvings, red and angry, engulfing them in a surge of heat. He stumbled backwards, the world around them spinning. "No!" he gasped, watching helplessly as shadows leaped and writhed, taking form right before his eyes. Figures, once mere whispers of darkness, materialized into grotesque parodies of childhood clowns with wicked smiles, puppets with strings of despair, and shadows of what once were innocent faces. "Are they alive?" she gasped, wide-eyed, clinging to his leg. I think they're trapped here." "All of them," he said, his heart sinking. They were more than memories, they were remnants of what had been a grim history that refused to let go. The laughter morphed, echoed back to them as almost a wail, an unearthly cry for help woven into the echoes of evil. He felt a tug within him, a desire to assist but held fast by panic. "Get out. We have to leave now," he urged, yanking the girl toward the doorway. The shadows roared in frustration, slicing at their heels like slashing knives. As they sprinted toward the entrance, everything began to shake. The ground warped, pieces of debris raining down like heavy bullets. His breath burned in his lungs, each step felt like running against a tide of despair. Just as they reached the doorway, he glanced back to see the pedestal pulse one last time, the carved figures flickering into chaos. A deafening scream ripped through the air, and he shoved the girl outside, both tumbling onto the damp ground. "Are we safe?" she cried, her face pale and drawn. For a moment, the fog rolled around them like a protective blanket, even though it felt far from reassuring. I don't know," he panted, glancing back at the building, which loomed dark and ominous against the silhouette of the setting sun. "Then what do we do now?" she asked, eyes wide with fear. He swallowed hard, determination creeping back in. "We go back. We have to finish what we started. Because whatever this place holds, it hasn't finished with us. Yet." A chill of new laughter echoed from inside, a haunting reminder that their journey was only beginning. And somewhere within the fog, something deeper stirred, something that had been waiting for them to return. The ground quaked as the detective and the girl stood before the massive structure that loomed over them like a feral beast. Its doors creaked open of their own accord, and the echoes of the laughter swirled around them, beckoning them back inside. The air crackled with anticipation, each breath feeling heavier, thicker, like breathing through molasses. "Detective, do we have to?" The girl trembled, her small voice cutting through the oppressive silence. The detective swallowed the fear clawing at his throat. "Yes, we need to understand this darkness and how to defeat it once and for all." "For you," the girl nodded, drawing strength from his resolve, and together they stepped back inside, hearts racing against the tide of foreboding. The oppressive shadows seemed to tighten, jaws ready to snap at their heels. "Welcome back." The voice echoed smugly, tinged with an unholy glee that sent chills racing down their spines. "Did you think you could escape so easily?" "We're here to end this," the detective shouted defiantly, forcing bravado into his tone. "What do you want with her?" He stepped forward, positioning himself as a shield between the girl and the encroaching darkness. The laughter came in waves. "She belongs to the night. She'll join us soon." "You can't protect her forever." "No." The detective's voice shook with fury. "I want to let you take her." Focusing hard, he felt determination swelling within him. "You've thrived on fear. But we're not afraid anymore." With each word he uttered, he felt a light surge, blazing from a core he didn't know he had. It flickered powerfully, illuminating the shadows that writhed hungrily at the edges of their vision. "Come on," he urged the girl, gripping her hand tightly. Together, they advanced, the shadows hissing and recoiling as they drew closer to the pedestal. The carvings glowed with the memories of laughter, faded but angry. A flicker of hope ignited within him. "Listen," he shouted, each syllable laced with urgency. "These children are trapped. We have to save them." With newfound determination, he reached out, palms resting against the cold, clammy surface of the pedestal. The shadows hissed in protest, yet the voices that echoed from the carvings sounded desperate, a twisted harmony of pain and longing. "Help us!" they cried, their voices blending into the winds that rattled the building. The detective closed his eyes, focusing on the feelings swirling within him, compassion, resolve, anger fueling the fire that surged through his veins. "Free them," he whispered, feeling a warm light bubble beneath his fingertips, sparking against the energies of despair. His heart raced as the light grew a radiant brilliance that split the darkness, illuminating every crevice in the room. "Stop!" The shadows roared, but their voices faltered against the rising warmth. As they pulsed, the pedestal began to shudder, the carved figures blinking in frantic ripples. The girl gasped, her gaze locking onto the frantic faces. "They're in pain." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "They want to get out." "Then let us help them." The detective shouted, his voice resonating, shaking the very foundation around them. "We can bring them back." He pressed harder, pouring every ounce of love he could muster, every feeling for the innocent children who deserved freedom. The light cascaded outward, undulating, expanding beyond him, a force of raw, unadulterated light. Then, the scream tore through the air again, this time mingled with a wail of despair from the shadows. "No! What are you doing?" The darkness shrieked, recoiling violently. "You cannot undo what has been done. Watch me." The detective shouted back, pushing the energy toward the pedestal. The walls flickered, caught in the balance of force and fear, crumbling, caging shadows begging for mercy. One by one, he felt the light snatch at the trapped figures, the helpless children who had longed for freedom, pulling them back from the abyss. They were drawn into the warmth, faces transforming from horror to hopeful light. "This is for you," the detective urged, his eyes piercing with focus, the girl beside him glowing brightly as she echoed his bravery. "You're not alone anymore." A pulse of desperate energy surged around them, and the shadows screamed, twisting wildly as if trying to cling to the last fragments of power they possessed. But it didn't matter, they were losing their grip. The walls shuddered again, and slowly, the children began to emerge, stepping into the light, their faces glowing with the remnants of joy and innocence. "No!" the shadows screeched. They collapsed as the light gained strength, swallowing the darkness that had once attempted to take them. With a final blinding flash, everything erupted into a brilliant wave, a burst of pure energy cascading through the room, reverberating against the walls as it consumed the shadows utterly. "Together!" the detective shouted, feeling the girl's small hand clasped firmly in his. "Hold on. We're leaving this darkness behind." As they stepped back through the fading shadows, a warmth enveloped them, pulling them closer to the exit, fingers intertwined, hearts racing as they leaped together into the daylight. The air brightened, fresh and warm. They tumbled out into the safe embrace of morning, sunlight showering over them, the darkness retreating into whispers behind them. The girl gasped, blinking at the brilliance that surrounded her. Did we do it?" "Yes," the detective breathed, relief flooding his body as he dropped to his knees, holding her tightly. "You're safe now, we did it together." Tears flooded her eyes, and she nodded, relief crashing over her like an ocean wave. "I was so scared, but you saved me." She wrapped her arms around his neck and hugged him tightly. The detective looked out as sunlight warmed the town of Maplewood, the shadows dissipating into nothingness. The horror that had once clouded their lives was gone. They had conquered fear, and somehow emerged stronger on the other side. As the townspeople began to gather, worried faces turned to hope and curiosity, he felt a weight lift from his chest. This was more than survival, it was a new beginning. "Let us go home," he murmured, rising with the girl, leading her forward into the light, into a future where hope resided, a testament to the bond forged in the darkest of nights. They stepped back towards the town, the soft morning sun bathing them both in warmth and newfound courage, ready to face whatever came next. Together, now, this is your moment. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive story. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Let us know your thoughts, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this story wraps up. Your support is everything.